Welcome to our recorded CFAS webinar on attachment and play. We're called Claire Dale and Sarah Butcher, and we're play therapists and social workers over at the Centre for Adoption Support within Adoption Matters. We provide post-adoption support to children and families, both as part of the CFAS core offer to all our families and through therapeutic work we provide, which is commissioned through the Adoption Support Fund. The fields of both attachment and play have a rich, wide and varied research and practice background, which have developed our understanding of parent and child relationships and the impact of abuse and neglect for many decades now. For the purposes of our discussion today, we wanted to focus on some of the themes and issues which our adopters have shared with us in our many conversations together. We will briefly attempt to explore why play is crucial to building attachment, connection, and attunement in the early weeks, months and years of placement, and to consider a few key play ideas and strategies that can be used in the early formation of your growing relationship and bond with your child or children.
So why is play important? Play can sometimes be viewed as something frivolous that children do to pass time. What we hope to convey in this webinar is how important it is in terms of developing relationships with others, and that children learn and practice a variety of life skills through play. Play is how children learn. Gary Landreth of Play Therapists said that play to the child is what verbalisation is to the adult. It is a medium for expressing feelings, exploring relationships, describing experience and disclosing wishes. I'm going to look briefly at some of the reasons of play. So firstly, children are exploring the world around them. Children can be curious, and in exploring, they learn about the impact that they have on the environment. They look, they listen, they observe. When they bang on a drum, it makes a sound. They push an object, they make it move. Play allows children to investigate and experience their surroundings and understand cause and effect. They can make sense of this through sensory experiences, using smell, taste, and discovering texture of what is around them. Learning about self and others, children also use imaginative play to recreate experiences. They may take on roles or pretend objects. They may act out experience with other people and rehearse social skills. Children can seek challenge through play and engage in new experiences, having permission to practice and making mistakes in play. Through play, children are learning how to interact and develop social skills, building relationships and connections. Play can really help build positive relationships of trust and security. Many adopted children may initially view the world as an unsafe place because of their past trauma. They may lack trust in others and view themselves as incapable of being loved. When providing positive engagement through play, the child can begin to see the world as a safe place. They develop trust and a sense of their own value and worth. Studies show that when playing, children can release emotions and play out their traumas so they can share feelings freely. Children use play to solve complex problems like catching a ball or expressing joy after an accomplishment, and frustration when required to try again and again. Play helps children with social development and to be cooperative and considerate of others. It can also teach them rules, physical games like catch or board games. It builds language and motor skills. Play enables children to practice their language skills and build on their vocabulary. Through listening to others, they can refine their speech sounds. Play helps with sequencing, attention, and listening skills. It can also be really helpful in reinforcing memory and helps children understand, again, like I mentioned before, cause and effect. We can also think about singing songs, which provide the opportunity to increase vocabulary. Through repetition and rhythm, it can also help regulate children, such as some songs you might be familiar with, like the Grand Old Duke of York, or there may be others that you know. When children use their imagination through play, it can enhance their gross, fine or visual motor skills. Pushing a chair along a room is no longer a chair, it can be a tray. Children can use their body and objects around them in new ways. Play encourages movement, balance, dexterity and awareness and an understanding of spatial relations. Sensory motor play, when the child is exploring how objects and materials feel and behave. For example, Play-Doh, sand and water play are all wonderful sensory experiences. Play also helps to learn to regulate behaviour. Playing with your child is one way to help them develop social skills and self-control. It can help children regulate their emotional state and emotional reactions. Play can be attuned, engaging interactions between a child and their parent. It promotes a secure attachment, a positive internal working models of the self and the world around them, and a capacity to regulate. Children can also learn through play what's acceptable by taking their cues from you. Parents can model through regulation through play, techniques to help children feel less anxious and more secure. Play provides the experience of being excited and then in a calm state. The parent co-regulates through play, through playful interactions and connection. Through play, children can also learn to wait for their turn. They can resist the temptation to grab objects from others. They can control negative emotions, manage frustration of challenging activities. Games can help, for example, freeze dance, follow the leader and cotton ball blow. They're all really helpful games for regulation and taking turns. And then the other point on the slide is positive interaction. This benefits children and parents when they play together. Play promotes connection. This is key. Through play, we provide a safe environment in which we practice social skills and form a positive connection with the child. The secure emotional attachment supports children's ability to cope with stress and anxiety. Both the parent and the child use eye contact and facial expressions, voice tones, gesture and touch as a way of communicating with one another and showing interest and delight in one another. When engaging in face-to-face play with shared attention and emotions, your child has repeated experiences of joy. And laughter as well, the other point, it resolves anger and anxiety by reducing stress hormones. Following traumatic experiences, you can literally rewire your children's brains through specific kinds of play that help them recover from trauma. I'm not going to go into this in depth, there's a lot to say in this area, but it's understood that playful behaviour appears to have a positive effect on the brain. It possesses the remarkable capacity to reorganise pathways and to create new connections. Ongoing stress reactions can impact the child's ability to maintain emotional regulation. Stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline surge through the children's body during stressful times, and play can help to alleviate this. Play can trigger feel-good hormones, endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine and serotonin. This is linked to enhanced memory, attention and creativity. Play is a natural stress reliever and an outlet that allows children to work through fears and anxieties. And furthermore, mirror neurons are a type of brain cell that respond when we perform an action and when we witness someone else perform the same action. Mirror neurons can help parents attune to their child. When we laugh or we smile, it can be mirrored. It is often helpful through play to revisit emotional stages that your child may have missed out on. Theraplay is one approach which gives some ideas around this. There are different stages in play, and it's important to meet your child at their emotional stage. So this diagram gives you an idea too of the benefits and divides play into 4 areas. There may be play activities that you can recall that fit into these categories. A child's overall physical, emotional, cognitive and social development depends on play. Physical play, such as jumping, riding, dancing, rough and tumble and ball play. These develop sensory motor skills and physical activity. It also releases energy and endorphins, the natural feel-good chemical. Social development, and I've talked a bit about this earlier, makes positive relationships with others. One aspect that I'm going to mention is that play also helps with conflict resolution. This can be done through storytelling, use of puppets, or role play, playing various scenarios. Cognitive development, such as stacking games, snakes, ladders, matching games, and I Spy. It develops thinking and sorting skills. And emotional development is play gives children the opportunity to attempt new things without the fear of failing, so they can feel good about themselves and know that it's okay to make mistakes. When children overcome a challenge or an obstacle, they can develop a real self-confidence, such as jumping off 3 cushions or jumping across a muddy puddle. Imaginative play gives children an opportunity to explore their emotions and to express and act how they feel. Children learn to cope with emotions such as joy, anger, and practice understanding and empathy.
Ryan North stated that the human brain is wired for connection, but trauma rewires it for protection. We will, with this quote from North in mind, briefly consider the attachment cycle for infants. In a secure attachment cycle, a baby experiences a discomfort or need, i.e. they're hungry, hot, cold, bored, wet, windy. The cry is an evolutionary design to help communicate the need for proximity and support when the infant does not have the cognitive capacity nor the speech and language development to verbalise this intrinsic need. In a secure attachment cycle, the caregiver will consistently seek to understand and explore with the infant what they might need. This might be to change their nappy, wind them, give them a cuddle, feed them, etc. It's in this process of actively testing out and trying to understand what's happening in that moment for the infant that there occurs the dance of synchronicity. There is more often than not the rhythmic movement as the parent cradles the infant, the use of motherese, that undulating rhythmic tone of the parent's voice. There is the locked-in eye gaze pattern, and there is the impact of the infant being placed heartbeat to heartbeat, skin on skin. All these elements of the interaction create a calming and regulating effect on the infant in both body and mind through the active process of co-regulation. Through the build-up of multiple serve and returns of this cyclical and ongoing pattern of interaction, the child develops over time a complex array of internal and external messages that communicates trust and builds up the intrinsic belief that the infant is worthy of love, attention and affection. Their internal worldview is constructed on the lived experience of the child, that the world can begin to be explored with this attuned caregiver providing a scaffolding of security, predictability and safety. This builds the infant's belief and trust both in itself and others. It also aids the development of a blueprint that is based upon experience that close human relationships can be safe, predictable, anchoring, and that if I'm okay, the world is inherently okay too. The infant feels self-worth, is able to understand object permanence and rationalise cause and effect, and is more readily connected with their senses. In an insecure attachment cycle, the infant, as in the previous cycle, communicates a need in the only way it can, through its cry. In contrast, within this cycle, the caregiver does not respond at all or inconsistently due to the numerous reasons such as mental health, drug or alcohol issues, learning difficulties and/or issues such as domestic violence. This leads the infant over time to respond in either of 2 ways: to cry even louder with rage, provoking either a response of anger or resentment from the caregiver, or no response at all, or to invoke in the infant empathy, through which over time they learn that their cry does not signal a safe or tangible response from their caregiver. And so there's no value to be gained in crying out if the response is either frightening or you receive no help at all. Within the insecure attachment cycle, this infant, in contrast to the securely attached cycle, the child, fundamentally learns that neither itself nor its caregiver are trustworthy. Because if the infant mattered, the caregiver would try to pick him or her up and understand and read their cues and distress. The child internalises that they are somehow unlovable and unworthy of attention, and often experience the toxicity of shame. The difference between guilt and shame being that guilt says you have done something wrong, while shame believes that you are something wrong. These children develop an innate mistrust of their own selves and of others, often appearing hypervigilant, needing to control others or their environment, either internalising and suppressing their own needs to please others, or externalising them in response to scarcity worldview. This is the fear of not being noticed, of not getting your needs met, of being rejected and abandoned. All of the complex array of these responses are intrinsic survival responses, which have helped these children survive very difficult and challenging early lived experiences. Insecurely attached infants are often disconnected with their own senses because they have sat in their own urine or excrement for too long, or sat with hunger or cold, or not had play or stimulation in their body and minds for too long. In these instances, the infant's mind has cut off from this distress because it can be intolerable. Due to developmental trauma, these children also do not develop the neural connections that build up a growing understanding about object permanence. They do not learn about beginnings and endings and everything in between from the safe, secure base of a caregiver building up the predictability of leave-taking and reunion. For insecurely attached children, the world and human relationships are not predictable and coherent. They are often frightening. Essentially, if the infant is not okay, then the world itself and everyone in it cannot feel okay or safe either.
So this slide talks about parenting challenge, building trust and security. So trust is key, and this takes time, so be gentle with yourself and your expectations. Some children can find affection and intimacy overwhelming, but play can be used to encourage touch and build connection. And some ideas around this can be hand stacking, catching a child jumping off cushions, passing high fives, and eye gazing, or the first to smile challenge. Being present with your child is about being there in those moments. As the child feels seen and noticed, they may be commenting and wondering out loud. Theraplay encourages lots of noticing and giving attention, such as counting fingers and toes, or how many freckles, or measuring the length of their arm, or doing Play-Doh or paint prints. Mindfulness, the other point, is about parents' capacity to be attuned to the child's mental states, such as their thoughts, their desires, their emotions and intentions. Maines would suggest using mind-related comments during parent-child interactions, referring to cognitions, for example, you know this song, desires, you like this game, emotions, and I can see when you're angry, when a child is trying to grasp a doll, you really want to grasp that doll. It's giving a narrative around their play. Healing trauma is a relational process. The huge body of research on neuroscience has served to reinforce the important role of human connections. Bruce Perry talks about where the early connections have been compromised, that there is a reparative role of later healthy connections and relationships. He summed it up. Relationships are the agent of change. This is really hopeful. The challenge is to be consistent. Some children maybe are fearful of experiencing fun and of having good times. It may be new for them and maybe create some stress. Additionally, some children are wary of affection or they may reject hugs. A playful stance can allow closeness, but without the scary parts. Dan Hughes recommends this in his PACE model of relating to children with a playful attitude. It keeps the interaction light and can help diffuse a difficult situation. The other point is fear of intersubjectivity for some children. The same person that can have a positive experience may also have been the source of fear and pain, and this may influence the child's response to play. This may mean that as a parent, your child may be fearful or wary of initially engaging, and you have to work hard at being in sync to match your child's affect. This is matching the emotion of the child's voice, their body language, and their facial expression to have a shared playful experience. Games that can be helpful promoting this are ones such as heartbeat rhythm, where you tap the child's heartbeat together and listen, sticker match, which is about making connections, and human magnets. There's more about that if you look into TheraPlay.
Let's consider briefly some of the main challenges identified by our adopters in parent-child play for children who've had adverse early experiences. Some children will have had minimal opportunities to receive the mental, physical and social stimulation that play helps to develop. This might be due to a physical environment where there is minimal, safe and appropriate space to play, or lack of play objects and materials, or maybe due to the lack of scaffolding and stimulation physically and mentally from the caregiver. Often, if a parent has had little or no experience of the joy of mutual interactions and connectivity in a playful moment within their own childhood, their ability to replicate what this looks or feels like with their own child will often be very limited. Over the course of their lifetime, children who are facing changes and transitions that may be trauma triggering will often make their behaviours regress. At these points, they appear to be much younger than their chronological age. Although it can be daunting for adopters and does need to be carefully monitored if it's consistently occurring, these can offer you a little window into your child's inner world. It also gives you chances in play to let your child go back to times in their early development when their needs were not met and redress the imbalance a little. Parents often find repetitive pools of play challenging because sometimes this can feel frustrating or boring. How many times can Spider-Man and the Green Goblin clash with the same outcomes? Or sometimes these play sequences can seem a little stuck and your child can appear heightened. Try to stick with it, to be the appreciative audience, to bear witness to the play, and let your child, wherever possible, lead it. This can be really important for your child. It's their chance in play to process some very difficult themes in their subconscious, to explore them in a less intense way than talking them out, in a less resistant part of their brain. It also gives them a chance to try out different endings and outcomes from different perspectives, often with more of a sense of control than they've ever had in their reality. Sometimes aggressive play can bring other worries for adopters. Not every child will play with this level of intensity, but many need to play out themes of helplessness, fear, anger, and reenactment of the trauma. This is normal for children who've experienced feelings of helplessness, powerlessness, and fear. By giving them space and scope to play out these themes with you as their safe adult by their side, it enables them to, over time, feel a greater sense of control and mastery. Hopefully, this play will become less aggressive or intense over time. By enabling them to play out big feelings, they're also receiving the very important message that it's okay to have big feelings, that it's okay to be angry, happy, or sad. By letting them explore these and helping them to name them, you're providing reassurance and permission to explore difficult feelings and sensations. Allied to these themes are the challenge of managing endings for our adopters. Often you'll have had a lovely dollop of one-to-one time with your child, and it can then suddenly descend into tears and anger when it's time to end. This can seem very confusing and frustrating for our adopters, but if you reframe this, remembering that all behaviour is language, this tells you that your child has had a lovely piece of attention and time with you, and the prospect of this ending feels very difficult for them. For these children, their loss template has been that things can end suddenly and very quickly, often without warning. Whilst you and I know that you'll reassure them and know that you will give them lots of the opportunities later in the day, tomorrow, or at the weekend, your child, when feeling like this, will be overwhelmed and flooded, and may in downstairs brain be fearful and mistrustful that this will happen again. Counting down the time, 1, 2, 3, using timers on your app or sand timers to provide visual cues alongside your verbal countdowns will really help. Also, when we've played X, then we will read a book together. Helps your child to feel able to move on from this ending in a way that you can help them to build up tolerance and predictability, that it can and will happen again. This message will take time to build up. Often children who've had difficult or painful experiences in their body and mind will find shame very destabilising. Often they might find it hard to start or try activities if they think they will fail or be unsuccessful. This gives you a little window into their inner life and shows that they may need time and lots of support, messaging that recognises effort rather than outcome. For example, I can see you were trying so hard to put the lid back on the Play-Doh. Thanks for staying so focused. Try to avoid very structured family games in the beginning. Using things like singing, scavenger hunts, parachute games, and sand or water play that have a more open-ended approach to play with multiple outcomes are really helpful. This will reduce competition among siblings and also enables your child to try out different possibilities in the play without getting stuck or overly focused on a very specific outcome, which if they don't think they will get, they may equate with failure. Sometimes wondering out loud here might also help. You might be worried about not turning out like you'd like. That's really hard for you, but Mum's here to help you, and maybe we can try again and build this tower together. Play helps to look at mirroring and noticing what is going on for yourself and your child. Remember what I said earlier about the importance of eye gaze, movement, music, and being held heartbeat to heartbeat and skin on skin. By noticing your child's initiations, the way they look, point, or move towards or away from you, these are little moments when they're letting you in. Sometimes in the early weeks and months, being really noticed may be hard for your child, especially if they previously lived in a birth family where being noticed might result in verbal or physical violence or of feeling invisible. So you might need to build up to cuddles and hugs. They might need to play alongside you or near you at first, so they don't have to feel the intensity of your eye gaze. Using high fives, thinking out loud, so your child can hear what you were doing, thinking, or noticing about them can be a good start. Play that copies, like pretending when you stand opposite each other that you're copying their other person in movement. The hot dog game, when you playfully pretend to put sauces and salad on the hot dog, which is a child, can all be about noticing, but doing it playfully so it's less intense. Games like marching and pretending to be different animals, nursery rhymes where you change words like twinkle twinkle to add your child's name, and physical features build up the intimacy. Row, row, row your boat, or horsey, horsey build up physical closeness and eye contact too. Your child or children are going to need lots of repetitions in play of these experiences of being held in mind and body. You will be modelling playfully that you think your child is interesting and worthy of attention, nurture and love. This will take time to build and time for your child to trust. And that's okay. Adoption is a marathon, not a sprint, isn't it?
So I'm now going to look at hide and seek. Piaget and Klein, two child development theorists, talk a lot about object permanence. This is the child's ability to know that objects and people continue to exist even though they no longer can be seen. If you hide a soft toy behind your back and your child goes to look for it, this is called object permanence. Permanence offers safety and security. It's what children need. Some children who may have experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of changes, may really struggle with this. They may think that out of sight is out of mind. And so understandably can be really fearful of separations. If a parent goes into another room, in their mind, they've just gone. A way of building this back in is playing games that are really simple, such as peekaboo. If you've ever played a game of peekaboo with a very young child, then you'll probably understand how this works. covering your face or hiding a child's toy and then asking where it is before revealing it. Initially, talking to the child if your face is hidden so that they can still know that you're there, using the same tone and stimulation each time. Build it up, repeated interactions so that the child understands that they come back. Holly Van Gulden talks about a game called Fetch, where you hide a ball or a button or something small around a room, but where the child can see it and they have to get it. These games build up the permanence pathway. Peekaboo lays the foundation for object permanence, and hide and seek reinforces it. Hide and seek gives a concrete experience of being separated for a time and then reuniting, the important part. This game can help children understand that with repeated, reassuring patterns that they are found, and it minimises separation anxiety. Often it can take time to build this up, and Holly Van Gulden suggests that you play it like a 2-year-old, as some children may really struggle to manage anxiety and need to be found quickly because they have an inability to wait or a lack of trust that they're going to be found. Hide and seek is such a simple yet powerful game that can convey a lot of positive messages. The joy of being hidden and found, the element of surprise. The parent may say, "I found you, I always will." Lots of positive emotional language to the child that conveys a sense of claiming and belonging. So this slide talks about obstacle courses. This is a fun way to develop balance, coordination and motor planning skills for young children. You can create and navigate an obstacle course. I would think about making sure that the challenge is not too complex and achievable for children. Some children can be fearful of trying new things. An obstacle course can give the child a feeling of success at mastering new skills and taking age-appropriate risks. It involves sequencing of activities, balance, strength, coordination, and also you could use sensory experiences such as uneven surfaces, spinning, jumping. This could be a course for the whole family and be inside or outside. So obstacle courses can help children with their coordination, balance, gross motor skills, large movements like crawling or walking, fine motor skills and small movements, for example, picking objects up. The book that you might be familiar with, Going on a Bear Hunt by Michael Rose and Helen Oxenbury, can be turned into an obstacle course. It's got different experiences like walking through grass, jumping through water, and there's also a clear beginning and ending which can really help children with transitions.
If you would like to find out more, please look at our website for the webinar menu and remember that you have your core offer of consultation sessions with us. Thanks so much for your time today and we look forward to seeing you over at CFAS soon. Bye.